Whatever.
5, 6, 7, 8. Hello, everybody. This is the Smart in Public podcast. Thanks for joining us today. This is a podcast where we talk about careers and life and business through the eyes of PR and comms professionals. Today, we have another guest on the show, Allie Cefalo, who is the Kleiner Perkins marketing partner. She has a long background in not only comms, but also has just transitioned into marketing. And she has a long background of being friends with Katie Duffy and myself as well. So, Allie, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I have had the pleasure and honor of learning from both of you.
Well, aside from talking about how great we are and how you've learned from us, let's talk about you and your career and give the listeners that maybe haven't met you before just kind of what your background has looked like and how you've landed at Kleiner.
Yeah. I guess when I think about my career, I think about it starting at the dinner table growing up. My dad's a mechanical engineer and my mom is a biologist. She was a lab technician. Whenever my parents would come home and talk about something that kind of was business stopping or not going well with their company, it was because of marketing or somebody in PR not being able to articulate their business to the street. And so I learned really early on that marketing was valuable because they were complaining about it all the time. And so that's kind of where I learned about what the function was, kind of how storytelling and influencing behaviors could be important. And I went to journalism school at the University of Oregon, Go Ducks. I know you guys have had some Ducks on, and we worked with a bunch of them. And I spent, kind of my post-college time helping founders and other company leaders tell their stories and become known for what they're good at. And that's spun both startups and kind of bigger companies, and now venture capital.
Which have you preferred so far? Do you like, obviously you have a role that you love right now, but what did you find the most challenging or the most fun in kind of all the various roles that you've worked across?
So I love startups. I think of myself as like a startup DNA person. But what I really enjoyed about bigger companies was the people. I got to work with the two of you. At a startup, you're usually sometimes a team that's one of one. Or if you're not, you're on a team of people who have superpowers that aren't so similar to your own. So I really enjoyed at bigger companies learning from other really smart people who kind of understood my role much better than my colleagues do anywhere else I go.
And what about, you've transitioned now into a marketing role, but obviously you've had sort of traditional, what we would call traditional quote unquote comms roles in the past. What sort of motivated you to make the switch? And do you think it was an easy switch? Like what was the motivator there?
I don't know that it was an intentional switch. I started at KP very much in a communications role, and the evolution has become part of marketing. But I think there's two things that I love about what we do, which is tell stories the most. And that's that it's a team sport. I grew up playing team sports. Boyce and I believe you did too. Duffy, I don't know this about you. Did you?
Yes, except it was netball, which is not big in the US. But
it's not, but I had enough Australian colleagues once upon a time to understand that that's more like basketball than soccer.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I got for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like this basketball and soccer had a baby almost. Like
actually it's probably like, European handball?
Yeah.
It's sort of like that with a bit of basketball. There's no soccer because there's no feet. Like there's not, but like you can't move with the ball is probably the big.
The rules feel the same to me though.
As soccer?
Kinda.
Well, actually, I didn't grow up playing soccer, so I don't know. Probably we'll just go with.
I feel like we've gone off track.
Okay, so we'll tie it all back. So let's talk about soccer then for a second. So I've loved to play midfield, and when we would be on defense, it would always really upset me when a forward wouldn't come back to help. Like really upset me, right? Because you're like, this is a team sport. Just get back here and help us out. And sometimes they'd be like, la-di-da, I don't want to do the extra cardio. I'm up here doing my thing. And that would frustrate me.
They're the worst.
Yeah, they can be like, they can be the worst. But on a scrappy startup team, you usually don't work with a lot of forwards because everybody's in it together. I find it in perhaps bigger companies, sometimes you do work with some forwards. And those are the boundaries. And it's the same in comms too. I think working with the two of you, we worked on so many things together that if somebody said, oh, I've put you in a box mentally, I think you do earned media for this big company. Those are artificial boundaries that I just don't think storytelling should have, because we're all storytellers and we can do that in so many other ways than earned media. And I think I've navigated into marketing because comms is kind of navigating into something bigger. I don't know if it's marketing. I don't know if it's brand. I don't know if it's some choice C that we just haven't decided on yet. But I think the nature of storytelling to different audiences across owned, earned, and paid is becoming a thing that everybody recognizes is a thing, and that we should kind of strip away the artificial boundaries of, well, we just tell our stories through earned media.
From the founders that you're chatting to, like, is there an appetite for the earned, owned, and paid kind of mix, or what are you seeing from, you know, that kind of basic starting point?
Definitely. I think generally speaking, founders today are very sophisticated in how they understand narrative or storytelling distribution. And they look at all three of those as distribution instead of, oh, if I get an earned media story, that's the story. I think they understand now that we kind of create the narrative as a group, as a team, and then however that gets out into the ether and reaches audiences is a coordinated approach. And they're less sensitive to, oh, is that an earned media opportunity? Or, oh, was that paid in some type of sponsorship partnership way? Or is it owned? Like, is it my own video, or is it something that a media source has created? Because I think they also, in their sophistication, have learned that the language of leadership has evolved a little bit. And I love that, because I think there's one thing about our industry is that it will always change. And I love that about it. And so we have to adapt and change with it. And I think I think it's exciting because we're never bored.
I feel like, especially in consulting, there is always this sense of urgency behind me of understanding and making sure that I know what is coming up or what the trends are in terms of comms and how to work with founders and how to work with companies to help innovate within their comms programs. Because that's kind of the value that you bring, right? You get to see across all these different companies and then find the best of what's working and then help other companies kind of adopt that strategy. When you're working with founders, like, what are some of the things that you're finding are resonating with them the best? Or like, what are the things that from all of those different strategies you get to use? Like, what's working for them?
I think video is big. Everybody's asking right now, should I be creating a launch video? I think you all would probably agree that landing product news in earned media is so hard. 10 years ago, not as hard as it is today. So product announcements, product launches, unless you're a big company, really hard to land earned media. And so we're finding that for product launches and demos, every company is also not big enough to have a large user conference and create a huge stage and produce an incredible performance, very ad hoc. So video has given people an opportunity to be interesting and kind of still like have control over the story, be able to use visual elements like demo and really show the power of what they're building, and also a little bit of their personality.
And do you think that, I mean, we'll probably get to a little bit more on kind of the whole founder piece and personalities, but do you think more and more people want to see the people behind brands and the personalities, particularly startups where it's founder led? Do you think that's becoming more of a thing versus sort of that polished professional CEO type?
I think that historically our profession has kind of stripped away personality to avoid risk. Right? Look at a risk profile, and sometimes personality begets risk to some extent. And I think the risk now is you look really boring and you look really canned. And I think back to media coaching that the three of us have all been part of, and how strict and stringent it was, and how much it was about not saying the wrong thing instead of here are the right things to say. Let's practice those things. And then here are some guardrails. And I know that the three of us have all evolved to that. And I think that founders have already evolved to that. I think there are some on the spectrum still of maybe more traditional and polished and really out there and bombastic and picking specific jewelry, you know, a little ode to it right here, perhaps.
What would you be talking about?
Well,
But-
that's one of. Sorry, go ahead, Allie.
No, that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, when we were chatting before the call, just thinking about the chains and that founder Riz, like, does that work for media from what you've seen? And then also just thinking about the founders that you work with, like, should they be leaning into their Riz? Like, what should that look like? Should I stop saying Riz? Like, tell me how to do this.
I have also heard that Riz is the word, and I have not been told to stop using it. I'll let you know if I ever get the memo.
Perfect.
I do think people should lean into what's uniquely them. And I love working at Kleiner Perkins because we get to work with founders, I call it, that are, 18 years old to their 80s. I've never worked in a place where I work with people of such a variety of ages and just personalities as well. I think Ariana Huffington, founder of Thrive Global, really leans into her Riz, and her Riz is very different than Dylan Field at Figma. He dresses differently. He approaches interviews differently. And that's very true to both of their personalities. And they're both extraordinary leaders that are very true to themselves and have a lot of, respect for what they've built too and their teams. So they're not disrespectful by leaning into their Riz.
Yeah. We were talking about, we used to have our executives wearing suits and ties in interviews, and gone are the days of that. You kind of want your founder or your CEO to at least not come off as a robot, particularly as you go into like AI and, just in uncertain administration and everyone's kind of following the leader. And, I just feel like a little bit of individuality goes a long way nowadays.
Totally. And it's refreshing. I think people want to work for people who are passionate and themselves, so that they feel like they can go and work somewhere too where they can, feel passionate and themselves.
I think it's harder when you have a leader or a founder who doesn't have any risk.
Yes.
Like, how do you, because I think that's where it gets hard, is like, I think now there is an expectation that sometimes these CEOs or these founders will be these a little bit left of center, or, wear their these kind of, whatever they want to wear, but, or have these quirks, I think is probably a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have an exec who, for all intents and purposes is very intelligent, doing a great job in the business, all of that stuff, but just doesn't kind of have that. Do you think you can teach any of it?
No, I don't think you can teach this.
Yeah.
But I hear you, and I work for a partnership right now of the most lovely human beings, and they don't have quirks that I would call out to say are something that they would get a headline for.
Yeah.
And I kind of love that about them. They're
Yeah.
really good humans that treat people with respect. But because of that, they're not the loudest voices in the room. We don't get the most headlines, and we're not on the news all the time. And that's okay with them. So it's okay with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing is finding who's best to do what, right? Like, if someone like that, you definitely want them in the room if you're doing maybe an investor call or you're doing something that's a little bit more sensitive, because it tends to lend itself to that. Whereas you might have a gun like engineer who's super quirky, who's like the technical person, and that's your Riz, right? And you roll that person out. So I think it's worth looking at your bench as well sometimes. It's like the founder, if the founder maybe doesn't have that kind of, don't put them on a stage where they're expected to be that, right? Because it's just going to go badly. Find someone who can do those jobs. Or those.
And just to go full circle with the soccer metaphor, I completely agree with you. But as a midfielder, like, I'm never going to get in the goal. I'm not a goalie. I don't have those skills. But that doesn't mean that the goalie is not really great at what they do.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And I think it's something that we all hold each other accountable for. And I find accountability as a theme of comms people specifically. For some reason, I don't know what it is, if we were taught it, if we teach each other it, but we all feel accountable for so many things about the storytelling in our business that I don't think most classically trained marketers feel.
Stephanie and I have talked about this a lot, even before the podcast was a thing. Like, I think that the work that comms people do is the most like vulnerable, viewed work, almost all the way like up to the CEO. Like, what we do is so externally visible every single day, and the buck stops with comms people, that I think you're right. Like, we have this huge level of accountability, and everything has to be perfect, and that attention to detail. And even trying to get comms people onto this podcast is really challenging, because we're so used to not being in front of the camera, and we can like correct people, but the accountability on ourselves, like the weight is almost too much to get people to speak up.
Completely. I've never done something like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I need to ask somebody for permission, because everybody always asks me for permission to do things like this. So who do I ask?
So true. We are the permission.
You ask yourself, Allie, am I permitted to do this? Yes, Allie, you may do it. Yeah. Yeah, it's just an
All I
interesting.
need in my life is the Katie's telling me it's okay.
That's right. That's right. This is what we tell everyone. We're like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But yeah, I think it's interesting, the marketing comms dynamic, because, we were talking a little bit about this before, and transitioning between marketing and comms. I think comms people as a whole are often touching a lot of elements of marketing without maybe even realizing. Before we kind of jumped on the podcast, we've been talking about like the whole product marketing piece, and how much in a lot of our past roles we've sort of sat in between that role. Did you want to just touch on that a little bit, in terms of like the parts of marketing that actually comms people are probably doing without even realizing sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a good example of this was, I used to work for a startup called Campaign Monitor, and I know that I worked on a team of some of the most brilliant marketers that I've ever and will ever have the chance to work with. They're just so good at what they do. And we had talked about doing an announcement about opening up an office in Europe, and, coupling that with customer momentum, and maybe we do an out of home buy, and how do we support the team that's on the ground and make sure that they know that when we're there, they're supporting them, and how do we also prospect in the area? And it was kind of something that was put on me, because I worked on a team of mostly product marketers, and they said, this is a communications exercise because we're leading with earned media a little bit, but go ahead and coordinate the rest of it. And the rest of it was a customer event, and there was part of the event that included prospects, and there was a part of the event that included media, and we did do an out of home buy, and it was a tube takeover in London, and it was so much fun. And I take no not responsibility. I don't take a victory lap for saying I did all of that, because I didn't, but I coordinated it all. And at the end of it, my lovely, lovely peers said, hey, Allie, that's what a product marketer does. And I was like, what? And they go, yeah, you PMM the heck out of this thing. We're so proud of you. And I was like, oh, I guess that was mostly marketing and not what I would traditionally think of as my job. Yeah. And when I went to my next startup and I explained to people what I had done, they were all like jaws on the floor thinking, what? Why did you do that? And I was a little miffed, or maybe annoyed, because at the time I was thinking, why aren't you excited that I have these skills, so you must have these skills, and we can all do these things. Isn't this so exciting?
Yeah.
Because I know the two of you could do that, no problem. And there was a lot of things that some of the bigger companies that we've worked at that we've done before, coordinating with other teams, bringing people together, getting everybody, working in the same direction and executing as a team. It's what we do all the time, because we operate in a world in which we can't actually do our jobs without other people.
Yeah.
I think a big piece of that too with marketing is that you still need a message. Sure, it's probably different audiences across, comms and marketing and who you're trying to target and when, but at the end of the day, you still need a compelling message and a narrative around whatever you're trying to say. I feel like events is such a good way to gradually get into that marketing world as well, figuring out what kind of panels, we used to do that a lot, like in our past lives, like doing panels and what the content looks like and how that folds into the rest of the event content and how do you promote it and what does a social look like. And a lot of the times I think that we think, oh, that was just for that panel, but really it's folding into a whole strategy. And so just thinking about things a bit bigger picture, it doesn't seem too far stretched to think that maybe a marketing leader could be in any comms leader's, scope.
That's absolutely how I feel.
Nailed it.
Allie, what about if we've got, maybe more junior PR people listening who are interested in kind of getting into the kind of VC comm space? Like, where should they go to learn? What should they be doing so that someone like you is like, oh, they look exciting. I want to come bring them onto our comms team. Like, what advice would you have for them?
Most junior comms folks that have agency experience are interesting to me, interesting to us, especially if they've worked with companies that are seed stage, Series A.
Yeah.
For me, at least, I meet a lot of founders that have only ever really told their story to customers and VCs. And never really thinking about talent audience or thinking about anything beyond that.
Yeah.
Or telling their story through somebody else. And I think anybody that's ever worked in an agency has had to coach a founder or a spokesperson through that process of rethinking their story through the lens of a different audience. I was also going to say, I also appreciate hustle, being able to context shift. And it's really all about the attitude. Do you have a good attitude about all of those things? And we talked about thinking, not putting artificial boundaries on yourself or your profession, but also respecting that other people have superpowers as well and operating with ambition and with a sense of urgency, but also with empathy and humbleness, and winning as a mindset all at the same time. It's kind of a hard combination, but attitude is everything.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the founders that you work with as well and kind of shaping their comm structures and kind of the work you're doing at KP. Can you walk us through, like, at what time does a founder need to start thinking about their comms program? Like, and when does that come into play?
So a lot of the early stage investments that we make at Kleiner Perkins are in Series A-ish companies, and founders will come to me having only ever talked about to customers, prospects, if you will, and VCs for the most part. And then they will kind of look at me and say, okay, I would like my story now.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that a founder is always supposed to be a great storyteller. They have told a great story if they're getting money from a VC firm. They also know that they're a good storyteller if they've gotten money from a VC firm. So I think I would love to see more founders be open-minded to understanding that there are different audiences that they're going to need to tell their story to, and that the same story isn't going to resonate in exactly the same way with a variety of people, and also to just not write those people off.
Yeah.
So I think a founder should be thinking about their communication strategy to all of their audiences that matter, including talent, customers, investors, and then also telling that story through other people like the media, like influencers, and what that means from the beginning would be nice. But at least, after they raise a Series C or Series A, definitely.
Yeah. Do you think to some extent I think you kind of said it, it's like they've been successful because they've got the money, so therefore something's working, so they kind of have that in their head. But then is it to some extent as well the immediacy of like where the business is right now and the investment they need to go get next versus like the story they need to start thinking about for the business, in a couple of years, or how big it's going to be. Because I sometimes feel like that's part of it, is like not seeing that long-term vision of like, this audience will be really valuable to us, so we should start now, even if it's not necessarily going to generate immediate revenue or an immediate investment. Like talent, right? Like they might not need a whole bunch of talent at the beginning, but you kind of need to start that early so that when you're ready to scale up, people are like, I want to go work for that company.
I find that the founders that are open to having that conversation and understanding that exact point of view, Katie, are the ones that go on to become very successful.
Yeah.
I've been at KP for over 5 years now, and so I've had the benefit of kind of meeting a bunch of founders 5 years ago and seeing which ones have built crazy enduring companies and which are but potentially still kind of fighting for specific levels of ARR. And I find that the ones who are absolutely crushing it are the ones that cared about a variety of audiences early on.
Yeah, I think that's missed often.
And it's nuanced too. But Boyson, I'm sure when you work with startups, you also are sitting there telling them, yes, you could get a headline if you bash on X company, but in the long run, is that really beneficial for your business?
Mm-hmm. There's a huge exercise that you have to go through with founders to almost just play the choose your own adventure and show the way that not execute on which ways they choose, but show the consequences of if they go that way. Like, I feel like it's a lot of that turn the page, okay, well then this happens, kind of scenario that you have to play with them quite often.
That's exactly right.
Do you think that the early stage startups, as they start to build out their teams, and usually the first hire is, I've noticed, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's either a marketing person in that area, not first hire, but like if they're thinking marketing comms world, it's a marketing person first, or it's a PR agency. Like, do you think that they know the difference between comms and marketing and what they do and the roles they play?
I think comms has done a very poor job of explaining what comms does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right that more founders are inclined to hire a marketer and then a PR agency because they think of comms as earned media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that really interesting. Like, it's so same but different if you look at it on paper, but really the activities and the thought process and the strategies that you're putting together and the tools that you're using are so different. And there's a huge gap in like education of what we could be teaching founders and how to best utilize both areas.
So I also caveat this with, it's true at the earliest stages. When a company gets a little bit bigger, I'm seeing at the Series C stage, let's call it, founders are hiring heads of comms or a VP of communications and then giving them headcount. And it's not traditional comms headcount. Comms brand leaders are now leading customer communications or, customer storytelling. They're also leading social media, specifically organic, and now some of them paid. They're being held accountable for metrics in the funnel. No longer can a comms person say, I provide air cover and nothing that I do contributes to the marketing funnel. I know that from some of the startups that I've worked at, like I was directly attached to MQLs and held responsible for a conversion metric.
Yeah. One of the Series A's that I work with, it's kind of expanded scope from doing the funding announcement and starting that relationship like you typically do as a consultant in that, in that world. And then expanding from, can you help with internal comms? And how do we build out our social programs? And what does our own content strategy look like? How does that tie into events? Like, that's literally how I've scaled all of my work internally, starting with a funding.
You do marketing, you don't just do comms.
Yeah, exactly. I guess I'm a bother now. I'm a bother. Yeah.
Or should we call it something else?
I want to make up something new.
Marcoms people, I think, are actually the right combo for a lot of like early stage startups. I would be looking for a gun who's done a bit of both, because then you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I think the personally, and we're going to get upset all the marketers when I say this, I personally think a stronger comms foundation with some marketing experience would be the best mix. Others might think it's the other way around, but I just think if you've got someone who's really clear on the narrative, the story, the messaging, then that can go across numerous. It's like back to the point about distribution. It's kind of like, well, where is the audience and where do we need to tell that story? But if you can't get the story right and the narrative, then I think you kind of, so that's what I would be saying to people is like, look for that hybrid person. And more, I think for junior comms people, it's like become a hybrid. Don't just be the pitching person who's doing media relations. Like try and grab as much opportunity as you can to learn the other stuff.
And give
So you're-
ideas as a junior comms person. Sorry,
Yeah.
Katie.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, so your hot take is that comms can do marketing better than marketing can do comms.
Yeah, I think so.
I like it.
I
I'm here
don't know. I have so many amazing marketers that I've worked with, similar to what Ali said. Like, I don't want to, like, there is an art to really good marketing as well. And that is not me. I don't think that's where my strength lies. But I do think we can stretch. Particularly, I really feel very passionately around content. I think that sort of paid, owned, earned mix, the more comms people are engaged in that, the better the content is my view. And that's been my experience in past roles is like when we get engaged, even on the paid content side, the content just up levels because it's more targeted, it's more thoughtful, the messaging's more, all of that stuff.
And there's one caveat there of things that comms people don't do well, and that's set up demand gen funnels, right?
We can tell you how to do that.
And I'll never forget the day that I started at the company that Katie knows well, or Poison knows well, Campaign Monitor. I started the same day as this amazing, she's a dear friend, and she ultimately became my boss at this company. She and I started on the very same day. And at the end of the day, she was like, well, what did you do today? And I said, I have a messaging foundation and it's all words. And she's like, oh, I go, what did you do today? And she holds up a piece of paper that looks like some shapes together. She goes, I built a funnel. And we both looked at each other and we were like, these things look completely different, but those were our superpowers. And together we were awesome. But she was everything that I wasn't. And it was so much fun to work with her.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing with the transition shift into a different kind of industry or, similar thinking of comms going into marketing. You can be really good at 90% of the things and then just hire a stellar team under you that knows how to do the shapes when you do the words, like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm technically responsible for part of or all of our CRM instance right now. We onboard founders on the marketing side, and there's a funnel that I go through, and I automate a message as soon as something happens, and it's great, and I love it. And I didn't set it up; somebody on the team did.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that if it breaks, I'm responsible for it.
And look, in an ideal world, if you have a gun CMO and a gun CCO, you're in a good place. So like, I don't think there's necessarily a world where you don't need both, but if you could only afford one, it's like, think about what that would look like. And that sort of hybrid person, I think, is not a bad thing. But where it's worked best, I think, is like a gun in both worlds, and you partner really, really closely and you show up as one united front to the business.
And what you're also talking about is if you can't afford both, you're looking for what's that person's superpower over what are they going to hire a number two for.
Yeah.
What would you say the key skills you would need to go from comms to marketing and make that transition? Like, what are the key skills that you need to have?
They're just going to change. I thought it was design.
Oh, interesting.
Like
I
actual design, like in
I learned
Canva?
Figma. I've learned the
Oh,
thing.
Figma.
I'm not great at it, but I learned it because I wasn't great at it. I'm better at developing slide decks, but now AI does my decks better than I can in design. So I thought it was going to be design. I now think that part of it is, more content creation and video too. But It's really just your attitude. Are you willing to dig in and learn something new, or are you going to put up artificial boundaries and say, that's not my job?
Yeah.
I love that.
We just had a guest on whose episode is coming out soon, so I won't reveal who it was, but he was basically like, the time for comms people to say they're not good at math is over. And, that's like a traditional, oh, we're words people, we're not. And that's one of my things that I have been like thinking about a lot is like, I believe comms people need to be much more embedded in the business, in the numbers, understand the funnel, understand the revenue model of the business, be able to talk in that language. And then I think with AI and some of this new tech, it's like saying I'm not technical or I'm not math. It's just, and it was just a really interesting comment of like, I mean, we've said it on the podcast and I'm not good at maths, but
Math is not my strong suit, but somebody that I work with so closely here, she probably doesn't love that we work so closely together because I bug her all the time. And I just gave her a little plaque in her office that said something to the tune of, let me stop what I'm doing to help you fix the problem you made. She does for everybody in the office. She's our CFO and our COO. She's been at KP for over 30 years. Her name's Sue, and she knows everything. But she doesn't just know everything. She doesn't just know all the numbers. She knows the history behind it. She knows the context behind it. Mm-hmm. And I would not be in my job without her helping me contextualize things along the way. Mm-hmm. And she has taught me so much about finance and cap tables and really anything that you need to know. And she hasn't done it just for me. She's happy to talk to people that don't understand. And it's amazing. But you're absolutely right. Like, we can't just say that we're not numbers people anymore.
Yeah, I found that to be so intimidating when I started to work with VCs from my consulting standpoint around learning about the cap table and all of the new terminology. Duffy, I'm sure you feel the same way about like being in defense now and having to learn all the new terminology. I felt like at my previous job, I just knew everything. It was almost like instinctual. And now I'm relearning how to speak to this different set of people. And I feel like if you want to get into VC comms, or is that something that you have a goal of doing, start trying to learn that terminology now and what that means to them, because there's a lot.
And I didn't really know it when I got here. You can learn.
Well, I remember when I first started consulting, I had a call with Allie just to like pick her brain on the market and what everything's looking like. And I was like, can you just tell me, like, I'm 5, what are all of these acronyms?
In like every meeting that I'm in now with a defense person. Like, sorry, that number that you just rattled off, I don't know what that is.
Has it been a crazy transition, Duffy?
Yes and no. And like, this is where I say to people, like, at the end of the day, I think my skill set is my skill set. It's like thinking about the story, thinking about the audience. Obviously, it's different because we have essentially one customer, the Department of Defense. And within that, there's obviously multiple parts of that as a customer. But, there's limitations on what we can talk about for obvious reasons and for the right reasons, for national security. So as a comms person, that's really hard because you might hear something really cool and then it's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. And so trying to find the narrative without, kind of revealing too much is really challenging. But I think the biggest thing is just the terminology and trusting my gut that when someone gives me something to review, I have to have the confidence that if it doesn't sound right, I'm probably right. But in the beginning, it's been like, oh, but maybe that's how they say it in defense. Maybe that's how you word that. And there's been a few instances where I've held back. And then as it's turned out, my gut instinct was right. And then it was written poorly and I should have fixed it. But it's just like having the confidence to go, it might be a different topic area, but writing is writing and this reads badly and I'm going to fix it. So it's
there you go, taking accountability for somebody else's decision.
Yeah. But it's like, I think it's just, and I mean, I have invested in my own learning and I would say that to anyone is like, it's on me to get up to speed. And I ask a lot of dumb questions, but I'm kind of okay with that because otherwise I'm just going to sit and pretend and that doesn't help anyone if I'm just pretending I understand what's going on in the room. So yeah, there's been times where I'm like, I am literally the only person in this room who does not understand half of what just was said, but I'm just going to ask and be like, sorry, what is that? I don't know what an effector is, or I don't know what this is. And it's like, people are very happy to explain, I think. And yeah, but it's been interesting for sure. different vibe in defense, but yeah, I'm loving it.
That's amazing.
So we've been through a lot, not only on our careers together and our friendship, but on this call. I feel like we should end in a dumb and private. Allie, do you have one?
I do. More embarrassing than anything, I guess. I was at the grocery store 2 days ago with my daughter after work in school, and I wasn't really paying attention to what she was asking. She was tugging on me, saying, Mommy, her stepped on a frog. And I was like, what do you mean her stepped on? She's not great with pronouns yet. She's like three and a half. And I was like, what do you mean? Oh no. She'd smelled something probably from like the meat or some counter, like, but she smelled a different smell. And she was like, her stepped on a frog. And the lady is now looking at me going, I did not step on a frog. And I didn't know how to tell her, like, that's how my husband asked my daughter is, did you fart? Like, did you step on a frog?
Oh.
And so she's like just standing there accusing this woman of farting, and the woman has no idea. And I didn't know how to tell her that that's what my daughter was accusing her of, not of actually stepping on a frog.
That's amazing. Where did that come from? Why did you start that? Just so
I
that
have
you didn't
no
to
idea. And you know what? I should ask. I have no clue, but it's better than how he was describing it. So I just didn't ask the question and moved on.
It's better, I guess, than her saying, like, that lady farted.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But then it caused so much. She's looking around. She's like, there's a frog in here. No frog. I didn't step on a frog. It wasn't me.
This lady's
like,
this.
She definitely did. And I'm like, yeah.
That's so funny. Well, that is way better than my twins, because my twins at the moment, if someone farts, they go farty. And it's so embarrassing because they do it out in public and you're like, oh no. So I need to learn that. I need to teach them that someone stepped on a frog. I love it.
But then pandemonium might ensue.
In grocery stores, yeah. Boyson, do you have one?
I just have, like, maybe mine's more of a PSA. I'm currently selling my house, and I'm moving just across the bend, just across the river. And I'm selling things on Facebook Marketplace right now.
Oh, that's a whole vibe.
Listen, the people that you unearth in your community by putting ads out on Facebook Marketplace is just, a social experiment in itself.
Yes.
But I had at least 4 people trying to buy my things that had gotten in touch that were actually scammers. Shout out to all of the Salesforce things that we had to, like, go and double check, and, like, the little drills they would, like, email you about phishing.
Yeah, they would call us.
Dude, there has been, like, 4. One of them I got, like, pretty far down, and then I was like, oh, hold on now.
No way.
Yes, but it's very tricky now. Okay, so
Chris ran training for the win.
Oh my God, I know, it was ridiculous. So one of them was in Marketplace, like, they'll accept the offer of whatever you're selling straight for the price. And then I was like, okay, great. And then this person's like, hey, can I come pick this up tomorrow? And I'm like, yep, perfect. So he's like, okay, just send me your email and then I'll Zelle you. And then you get an email from Zelle that's like, hey, you've, like, reached your limit for transfers. You need to call this number and, like, get your limit extended. And I looked at the email and I was like, why would Chase do that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I looked at what the email was from, and it was like a fake Chase email address. Like, it wasn't a proper email address. And I was like, this is a scammer. And then the same thing happened three or whatever more times. Same tactic from different people.
I feel like this would be a dumb in private if you got scammed. But I feel like now it is just a PSA.
It's just a PSA. But I felt really dumb because Scott was like, I can't believe that you got far enough down the track for them to send you the email.
It's easy to get far down the track.
I was excited. They're going to pay full price for my shitty table. So,
oh, But why? Like, I don't know about you, but Andrew never gets fooled. My husband is like, he's just bulletproof. Whereas I'm a little bit more, and I'm like, where did he get? Did he get a different gene than I got that was like a non-scamming gene?
Scotty's been trading crypto for 6 years, so I feel like he's seen it all. Like
Yeah.
nothing fools him, you know? Like you spend enough time on discourse and you know, you learn the ropes.
Always looking for the best in people, Katie.
Yes,
I know.
that's it. I'm just a nice person who wants to believe.
Yeah, sorry for believing in humans.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you have one, Devacy? Tell me that you did something dumb this week.
Oh my God, I've probably done like 1,000 things dumb. I'm just having one of those weeks where like nothing is going right. So just, I'm just living my best life. I was telling Boyson before we got on that one of my little girls is sick and she woke up this morning with just a full rash over her face. And you know where you're like, really should take you to the doctor, but I have a lot of things to do today. So,
And they're
so
probably
she's
just
lost my
gonna tell me
mother-in-law's
there's
with
nothing to
some
do.
cream on her face. And, if she deteriorates, we'll escalate. But until then, I'm doing some meetings and I'm getting some stuff done. So, mother of the year over here, living my best life.
You're outnumbered. I don't blame you. You have more kids than parents happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Allie, I mean, you have a little one. It's like constant. It's like, what disease are they going to get next? It's just like, ugh. They're just like, what is it? Why does she have a rash on her face? Like, where does it come from? It's disgusting.
Remind me to tell you the story about when the same toddler swallowed a coin and
Oh god.
the fire department came and they were like, it'll pass, and like it didn't, and she was living with it in her for like 4 days. And then we finally took an x-ray. They were like, oh my goodness. And I was like, is that? And they were like, that's not a sunspot. You're definitely going to the hospital tonight to get that removed.
A coin. Like why? It doesn't even
I
smell
know.
good.
She'll tell you now. She'll be like, Mommy, we don't swallow money. And I'm like, yeah, no, we don't. Another thing she
Learned that
says out
lesson.
loud to people, like, why did you teach your daughter to say that?
Well, it's also like, yeah, now we know that. Why did you go and swallow the money?
Sometimes you got to swallow it to learn the lesson.
That's true. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm still swallowing things and learning
Then
lessons.
the fire department came and she's like, this is awesome. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah, she would have loved it. Yeah.
yeah, loved it.
Yeah.
You guys just tune in next week for our parenting podcast. It's hosted by Devacy and Allie and myself.
It's dumb in public parenting.
Oh my god, I love this so much. Sometimes we just have these chats, and I feel like Allie, you're the perfect addition to this because Devacy and I will be chatting, and I have a moment where I'm like, oh, we're filming a podcast right now. So I feel like people will enjoy it if we're enjoying
Audience
it.
love it.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of parents who tune in. I think they relate to my lack of parenting skills.
I love it. Well, Allie, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we got a peek behind the VC curtain today, and it was just so great to have you on. Obviously, we personally love you very much, but I also just love you watching you grow your career and just become the absolute powerhouse that you've become. And I think people are going to have a lot to learn from you. So thank you.
You're the coolest and the best. I love you both.
Thanks, Allie.
So if anyone has a topic they want us to write about or has a guest recommendation or anything like that, you can email us at hello@smartandpublicpod.com. You can also follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Smart and Public Pod. And please, review and rate and like and do all those things that help our podcast out. We'll appreciate it. All right. Bye, everyone.